Everyone, welcome to the Pro MMA Betting podcast. So I put out a little video for Dana White Contender series happening tonight. Only 4 fights to break down. One of them got cancelled yesterday. I think someone had a botched weight cut. So 4 fights. Just disclaimer, that Dana White Contender series, generally speaking, general rule of thumb, it's quite difficult to cap. The fights are quite low level. A lot of the tape is regional tape. A lot of the tape can be hard to find. They're fighting opponents generally of a pretty low level, so it's hard to get a proper read on the fighters, how good they are, what their potential is. And what you find with a lot of these fighters that are fighting on the regional scene that come onto the Contender series or even the UFC, they seem to generally look a lot better. I don't know whether it's the fact that they're motivated or they fight down to their level of opponent on the regional scene. I'm not sure, but it's definitely more difficult to cap than your higher level MMA. Sometimes you get a real good spot to bet and the line's real generous. But generally speaking, this kind of show is more about betting on value. You know, you are having to take into account unknowns if you're betting on this show. And I don't advise playing the chalk on the Contender series because, as I say, the fights, generally speaking, they're really hard to read. What I have found the last few years, you often find some fighters get bet up on fight day to like a really, really big favourite number, like minus 500, minus 600, and some of them win, of course, but a lot of them either don't look like that kind of favourite at all. They come away looking a much smaller favourite, or some of them lose. So I'd really be careful playing the juice, guys. If you're going to play favourites, I'd keep it to moderate favourites, and I'd really look to bet the dogs on this type of show. Like I say, it's not going to tick all the boxes. I mean, dogs, generally speaking, they never do tick all the boxes because they're underdogs for a reason. But with this type of show, there will be less boxes ticked because there's just going to be unknowns. But you have to go with the value, and some of these fights you look at and there's a couple on this show we'll go into in a minute. It's going to be a short show. I'm breaking them down quickly, but, it's just difficult to cap some of the fights. So it's like, well, why is this guy the underdog when, really it looks like a 50-50, or maybe the other guy should be the favourite. So that's the way you have to play it. See how your results come out. There's no huge favourites on this first show back, but we'll talk about the odds as we go through. So first fight, we've got Jose Flores taking on Jordan Levitt. Jose Flores was on the Contender Series 3 years ago. He lost to Matt Frivola. He's a southpaw. He's got a nice body kick, hurt Frivola a couple of times. Showed okay grappling. He swept Frivola once. He had a nice armbar attempt. He showed some decent takedown defence against Frivola, who's a good wrestler. The fight was very high-paced. Everyone's probably familiar with Matt Frivola. He comes out, he gets in your face, pushes a high pace, tough guy, good wrestling. He cracks. He did drop Flores as well. Frivola won round 1. It was competitive. Round 2 started competitive, but about a minute and a half into round 2, Flores was spent, completely gassed, didn't have anything left, and he ultimately got taken down and got submitted in the end. He hasn't really done anything since. He's had 2 fights in the last year. He didn't fight for 2 years, basically, after Contender Series. He's had 2 fights since. I've found his last fight in combat. Hard to take much from it. He took the guy down and submitted him in the first round. So, for all intents and purposes, he's not had a proper fight for 3 years since the fight with Frivola. He's 32 years of age. You do wonder where is he going with his career? What's his thought process? Has he got another bite of the cherry here? It's going to be his last bite, so he's got to win this fight. Jordan Levitt trains out of, I think it's Extreme Couture. Sorry if I'm vague with any of the details, guys. I'm not familiar with any of these fighters. I've done tape on them, but I've done it a few days ago now, and I've done a ton of tape since, so I might forget some details. I'm bringing up their records, though, to remind me. He's 6-0. He's only 25 years of age. He had his first 4 fights featherweight, 145. His last 2 have been at lightweight. He doesn't look like a lightweight. He definitely looks like he should be fighting at featherweight. Not sure why he's moved up to lightweight. Doesn't look a very physically imposing guy. Got a bit of body fat. He could definitely make featherweight. Real one-dimensional guy. Really, really one-dimensional. He looks like a crafty submission grappler. but he's got no stand-up and he doesn't have much of a means to get fights to the floor. Poor wrestling. Kind of been out physical a little bit as well. I found his fight. I watched his last 2 fights. I found a fight with Izzy William and I watched his last fight on LFA, which was only 2 or 3 weeks ago. So he's recently fought. Yeah, this guy's definitely not got a high ceiling. I mean, Flores hasn't. If either of these guys get into the UFC, I don't see either of them lasting long. But I mean, Flores is definitely the more well-rounded guy. The big red flag is, 2 fights in 3 years, which were against very, very poor opposition. He won the fights very quickly, so he's not had a proper fight for 3 years. Big red flag there, and his gas tank did slow down against Rivola. It was a high-paced fight. Whether he slows down normally, I'm not sure. He's got 1 decision win, and he's got a win in the 3rd round as well, but I haven't seen him fight, so I can't judge him. Levitt, dangerous submission grappler. It wouldn't shock me if he catches Flores in some sort of scramble, especially as Flores slows. He did get a nice gator roll on his last opponent, and Frivola did hit that on Flores. So, but, when we're talking value, guys, I mean, the line's coming a lot, but Levitt was out. He opened about -200. I'm just looking. Levitt, that's not right. It's saying -150, but I think that it takes 5 times his odds. But Bet Online had him at like -200 for a little while. It's coming a lot now. He's a small favourite now at some books. He's like -125. He's still -150 at William Hill. Flores is a slight underdog now, +105. So, I mean, the value's kind of evaporating. How would I cap this fight? I would definitely have it at least a 50-50. I think Flores is the more well-rounded guy, but Levitt is the younger guy who I think he did look better between the Izzy William fight and his last fight. I thought he showed some improvement, but he's still clearly very one-dimensional and just has no stand-up game. So I don't know if there's any value left at +105. But I think anyone who got on Flores kind of, +120 or better, I think it was worth a punt. I'm not confident. I'm going to pick Flores just based on the value. I'm not confident. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets wrapped up in the submission. But I think the value is there, or was there, with Flores, just because Levitt is, he's like a relic fighter. It's like watching Royce Gracie, but without the deadly ground game that he had because he was facing people with no ground game. He's really a relic back to the 90s watching Levitt, and I'm surprised because he's from a good camp. I'm just surprised he's not more well-rounded. Next fight, we've got Mikey Gonzalez taking on Uros Medic. Another one really tough to get a read on. Let me just bring up the records of both guys. Mikey Gonzalez, firstly, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. There's pictures on his Instagram of him training and rolling with Jake Shields. So I'm not sure who his black belt's under, but, I'm not sure what level it's at. But, I know most people have got black belts these days, but it's something to take from looking at Rodriguez, because there's not much to take. He's got a Taekwondo background. You watch his fights. He's got some nice stand-up. Kind of, Taekwondo. So he fights a lot like kind of, obviously he's not as good, but he's got that Wonder Boy kind of look to him. He seems pretty potent with the hook kick. At least 2 of the fights I watched, he dropped guys with hook kick, so he's quite low percentage. He fights out of the southpaw stance, but he can switch. Just watching his fights, he fights orthodox and southpaw, so he can mix it up. I haven't seen him use his grappling though. All of his fights I watched were all stand-up fights, and the last fight I watched of his, when he took on the journeyman Justin Baseman in a rematch, he won a decision, but it was 3 3-minute rounds. It wasn't 5 minutes. I think the commentator said something to do with the air pollution. So his cardio is a bit of an unknown because he faced 0 resistance in that fight as well. So there's a lot of question marks there. How his cardio will hold up over a fight that goes the distance. So, yeah, plenty of question marks here. How's his cardio going to hold up under resistance? Has he got any means to get the fight to the ground to use his black belt? His stand-up, it does look adequate. He looks, okay on the feet, but he did look a little low volume. But couldn't find his split decision loss 4 years ago. I've only seen the Justin Baseman fight. I found the Antoine Smith fight, and I found both Justin Baseman fights, the Antoine Smith fight, and I think I watched his debut where he caught Steve Shilburn with a nice right hand. So, yeah, quite a few unknowns there in terms of how he's going to look if he's in a competitive fight and if he can get fight to the floor. Uros medic. He's from Alaska. He's fought on the Alaska FC show, which is quite notorious for being quite low level. I mean, Gonzalez hasn't really faced anyone. At least Justin Baseman is a bit of a veteran. Been around, fought a lot of decent guys, but I mean, this guy's fought no one. Record of the guys he's fought is really bad. The last guy he beat was 5-0, but I can't believe that guy's career's been a welterweight. He looks absolutely tiny next to Medic. He looks like a lightweight, maybe even a featherweight. I can't believe that guy's campaigning at welterweight. He's a southpaw as well, quite aggressive. A lot of his attacks are left-sided, the left kick, the left hand. So the kick isn't going to be there for him against Gonzalez if Gonzalez fights southpaw. So how will he adjust to not being able to use the left side of his body so well? He gets taken down by everyone. He lost the first round to Nathan Fitoza, was 2.5 years ago. So, has he improved since then? I don't know. Jason Flowers took him down as well. He caught him with a triangle. And his last fight, he just dominated the guy. So, we've not really seen his takedown defence tested for the last 18, 19, 20 months. There could be improvements there. We just don't know. But he's not fought good opposition. I think he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. He won the Alaska Open or something. But Gonzalez seems a level or two above on the floor on the mat. But whether he can get it there, I don't know. So again, it's just a really hard fight to call. So you have to just look at the value. Odds currently, Gonzalez is the plus 130 underdog. You can get him at some places. Medic is minus 150. Hasn't been much movement on this fight at all. Again, I think if you want to bet it, you've got to go with Gonzalez. I think that's where the value is. I think this fight, like the last fight, should be a pick-em. Maybe Gonzalez, slight favourite. He is the older guy as well. He's like 34, so slightly concerning. Medic is the younger guy, but I'd be surprised if either guy or Levitt or Flores, the previous fight we discussed, are going to be, UFC material. I think if either of them get a contract, they're going to be in and out very quickly. So Medic might, in the long term, he might be the better prospect, but it's just he's fought no one. There could be improvements there because as I said, we haven't seen his grappling in 18 months or so, but I'm just speculating. I don't know. It looks like he still trains in Alaska. So, the only fighter I know from Alaska is Jared Cannonier, and he left to go and train at, I can't remember the name of the gym, but he left to go to that really good gym. So I can't imagine he's getting, great training over there. And you've got Gonzalez rolling with the likes of Jake Shields, etc. So, again, I'm not confident. You shouldn't be betting this big at all, but I think the value side is with Mikey Gonzalez. Next fight, Jerome Rivera taking on Luis Rodriguez. Luis Rodriguez from the Mexican regional scene. I only watched his last fight, which was on Fight Pass. Let me just bring up his record. One sec, guys. He's only 20. He's like a really young guy, 20 years of age, I think. He looked quite raw. He was getting dominated in the grappling. The guy kind of just gassed out, and Rodriguez, quite aggressive, managed to take over. Some 2-1 guy called Dagoberto Ferreira. That was only back in Feb. So, 6 months to improve, but, it's fairly recent footage. So at least you've got something recent to go off. And then he's just beating a host of names on the regional scene in Mexico that I've never heard of, basically. Jerome Rivera, I think, looks like a decent fighter. He had a tough loss to, was it Casey Kenny? Let me just bring up his record. In LFA, Brandon Royval. He literally posted his arm to lean on the fence and his arm broke. It's real gnarly. If you're into that kind of stuff, go and have a watch. It's like one of them leg break ones. If you've never seen Ross Pettifer, he's an English fighter. Put it in YouTube, Ross Pettifer, Pettifor or Fer. Leg break. If you're into watching that kind of stuff, there's a gruesome one from the English regional scene from years ago. But back to this fight. Yeah, I like Rivera. I think he looks like a decent-ish prospect. I've not got a full read on him, but he's only 25. He's got a very good frame for flyweight. He's 5'10". Decent stand-up. He's pretty aggressive. He's got a good ground game as well. So I like him here. He's faced Roberto Sanchez 3 years ago, who's a decent fighter. He lost the fight in the third round, but he's fought Brandon Royval over very quickly. He was unlucky with a broken arm. But, he's fought some guys that I know of, some, decent fighters. I watched his last fight against Kendrick Latchman back in January on LFA. It's on Fight Pass. And I liked what I saw, so I do like him here. BetOnline opened this at even money. So, of course, people that had taped it jumped all over Rivera. He's now up at minus 265. Louis Rodriguez, is there value on him? I don't personally see it. I wouldn't play Rivera at this price. So, plus 200, it is lower level stuff. Crazier stuff's happened. But I thought Rivera looked pretty good. So, I like him here. I think if there's any value, I don't know who has it except for BetOnline, but BetOnline do have the over-under for this fight at 2.5. They've got the under set at minus 145. I think Rivera probably gets the finish based on watching the Mexican's last fight where he was getting dominated in the grappling by a not very good fighter. So I think if Rivera doesn't hang around on the feet for the whole fight and does use his grappling, there's a good chance he gets a finish. So personally, I think if there's any value left on that fight, it is the under. And we know what it's like on Contender series as well, which I didn't mention at the start when I broke down kind of what to watch for on when betting this show, is that fighters as well are trying to impress Dana White. They really want the finish because it gives them a higher chance of getting a contract. So a lot of them will fight differently to how they fight on tape. So that's another thing you have to bear in mind with this, is guys will be a bit more reckless because they want that contract. So bear that in mind as well when you're betting these fights. Next fight we have, which is the main event, is Dustin Jacoby taking on Flores. BetOnline had an absolute howler here. They opened the Flores at minus 300. The line's completely flipped now, and Jacoby is minus 300. They've obviously just wiki capped, because if you look at Jacoby's MMA record, he's only had one MMA fight in 5.5 years. But when you have a look at his record on Tapology, you can see that he's had a lot of kickboxing fights. He's had a lot of fights in Glory, and he's done pretty well. He's got real nice stand-up. Jacoby, he's been in the UFC before. I think we're going back about 9 years since he was in the UFC. So he has been in the big show before. I didn't go back and watch his UFC fights, but I know Clifford Starks hit 3 out of 3 takedowns. So I'm not sure if that's been an issue with him in his career. When you look through his fights since, he got cut from the UFC, and then he got a win over Tim Williams, who some of you might remember from the UFC. He had a couple of fights. He nearly, he gave Eric Anders a good fight until he got stopped late in the third round. He lost to David Branch. Then he beat Andrew Sanchez, who fights this Saturday, a long time ago, 2013. But he's been in there with high caliber guys in MMA. And then a lot of kickboxing bouts. Started off a bit ropey in the kickboxing, took a fair few losses. Went back to the MMA, fought King Mo in Bellator, John Salter, very good grappler. And then he went back to the kickboxing, and he's had a lot more success in the kickboxing field since 2015, basically. He reeled off a number of wins. He beat Carl Robertson, a UFC guy. I watched that fight. Comfortable victory over Carl Robertson. I think Jacoby's got a lot more experience than Carl Robertson had at the time, but it was still a pretty dominant win for him. Some of his fights are available with the Glory fights. You can probably find most of them on Fight Pass. I only watched a couple of his fights. And then he fought Cody East, which was his first MMA fight since, just have a look at his record, since the John Salter loss in January 2015. Then he fought Cody East. 4.5 years he'd had an MMA layoff for. Someone told me the Cody East fight as well was his and Cody East's third fight of the night. It was kind of a hybrid type event. I think the first fight was kickboxing, then it was boxing or something, and then they done MMA. So I think both of them were into their first fight, because when I watched it, Cody East did look quite sluggish, but it was up at heavyweight. Cody East, or Jacoby, is a light heavyweight. He can make middleweight as well. This fight's actually being contested at light heavyweight. But Cody East, he just picked him apart from the outside with a jab, really. Cody East tried a few takedowns, couldn't get them, and this is just the big unknown here. On the feet, he should dominate Ty Flores, but it's just Jacoby's takedown defence. Where's his takedown defence at? How much has he been putting into MMA over the years? Did stuff Cody East, who's a big 260-pound heavyweight, but the shots weren't great from Cody East. And Cody East is, as far as I know, a striker. I don't think he's got a wrestling background, so how much to read into defending those, I don't know. Obviously, the guy is very big, a lot bigger than Ty Flores, and he was stuffing him. He trains at Factory X, so he's getting good training in if he is training or cross training the MMA. I watched his last fight, which was a kickboxing bout against Tony Lopez. Tony Lopez is an old MMA veteran, old guy now though. I think he's in his early 40s, and he was just completely overmatched. Ty Flores trains at a Team Elevation, so he's with a good camp. He's not fought in over a year, so there could be improvements there. He's only 26 years of age, so there's room to improve. He's got a win over James Boknovic, who some of you might remember, or the ice cream van's just turned up. Some of you might remember from the UFC, lost to Marcus Perez. I can't remember. I think he lost to someone else as well. The guy's terrible. I don't know how he got into the UFC. But yeah, he doesn't look great, Flores, but he's had over a year to improve, so there might be some improvements. He's kind of pretty limited athletically. His stand-up looks terrible. He's tenacious, though. He'll kind of take hits. He'll try and get you to the mat. His wrestling's not great, but he's just one of them guys that's quite tenacious, that keep coming forward unless he gets knocked out. And he's been knocked out a couple of times. Jeff Neal knocked him out. Aaron Highfield knocked him out. And then he's not fought the best competition since. I think Eric Murray's last fight, he started fairly well, Eric Murray, but then Flores just managed to get the takedowns going and just dominated him on the mat. So, but yeah, Bet Online messed up big time here. I mean, the line's completely flipped. Jacoby's minus 300. I don't think you can play that because Jacoby's only had the one MMA fight in 5.5 years. Takedown defense, big unknown, but he is a veteran of the sport. He's got some good wins. He's been in the UFC. He's faced good competition. He trains at a good camp. I think his takedown defense would be good enough to stuff Flores. I think Flores is a natural middleweight really as well, so there's no kind of size advantage for him here. Let me just double check his last couple of fights. Last fight was at light heavyweight. Fight before that was at middleweight. Fight before that was at middleweight. So I don't think he's got any size advantage. I think his only route to success here is Jacoby's takedown defense is either absolutely awful or he takes a pounding and Jacoby gasses himself out. But I don't think Jacoby will do that. He's just too experienced. That's like a rookie mistake, and I don't see Jacoby doing it. He's far too much fight experience to do that. So I think he's hard pressed here. But minus 300 is, it's Contender Series. You don't want to be touching the juice on Contender Series, but it wouldn't shock me if Jacoby knocked him out in the first round and warrant at minus 300 that he now is. They do have the over-under at Bet Online. They've got it set at 1.5, and it's basically even money. I guess if I had to play it, I'd hit the under. I mean, I got fortunate. I caught the opener on Jacoby. I didn't get like plus 250. He must have opened. I didn't catch that. I got him from about plus 150. And same with Rivera, I caught him at the opener, which was a pick-em, so I managed to jump on that. So I'd done the tape, and normally I miss openers, but I just happened to catch them. So, yeah, it's not... I mean, now where the lines sit, I think the only value plays are Gonzalez and Jose Flores. But, you know, even Jose Flores, like I said, in some places he's plus 105 now. I don't even think there's really any value there. I think you need plus 120 or better. So Gonzalez might be the only one with some value left. And guys, I can't give you any guarantees here because there's so many unknowns. I could be completely off, and Medic might come out and tool him. But going off what I know, I don't think Gonzalez should be kind of that size of an underdog based on what we've looked at. But tread carefully. It's Contender series. Hopefully we get some real good lines in the coming weeks, particularly on fights where the lines have settled and there's still some value and we've got a bit more information. You know, some like the Jacoby top Flores fight, for example, is one where we can pull quite a lot of information from them and make take a fairly good read from the tape available. But obviously the line's rubbish, and I don't really think Flores has much of a chance. What we need is a couple of fighters where there's plenty of information available and there's a playable line. That's what you need, and you will get them, but we're just going to have to wait. We've got 10 weeks of this, but a lot of the fights are just hard to predict, and some of them are just best served to avoid from a betting perspective, especially the juice. You've got to be careful with the juice on Contender series. So I'll do this every week anyway, 10-15 minutes. It won't be as informative as a normal UFC breakdown, but just to put my thoughts out there, and hopefully you guys can make some money. But this week's a struggle. There's, with the lines the way they are now, lacking value, and some of you are probably going to say, oh, what about a double Jacoby and Rivera? And I don't really like it. I don't like doubles, generally speaking. I prefer single plays, and I'm not in love with playing either as a straight play. So, why would I double them if I don't like them as straight plays? So, but Mikey Gonzalez is definitely a bet that could go wrong, and so is Jose Flores. But as I say, Flores has been bet down there where it's getting near enough for pick 'em. I don't think there's really much value there. So good luck anyway. Hope it's a good show. Hope it's entertaining. Don't bet much money, guys. Keep it small if you do have some punts, because I don't see how anyone could be confident here on any of these current lines. But we'll see. But I'll be back anyway next week. Well, not next week, probably tomorrow, to break down the UFC for the weekend.